Now let's talk about the injury situation at Derby County, of which it has been confirmed by John Eustace. Obviously, we're in a very sort of difficult position at the moment in terms of those injuries. Obviously, Carlton Morris picking up that injury against Watford. You've got David Ozo, Lewis Travis, Max Johnston all out as well as it stands. And we're going to take a look into every single one of those injuries. We're going to take a look at Dion Sanderson, who is set to return from suspension on Saturday, and we'll see if that is the right move to make. Now, obviously, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, but let's dive into it. This is the Derby Digest. So let's start off with the most important and the most impressive news of this 2025-26 season, and that is that Curtis Nelson is now registered at Derby County and was involved on Tuesday night, with Owen Beck returning to Liverpool in order to have surgery on his hamstring. That means that Derby County have been given an extra slot in which they have deregistered Owen Beck and they have brought in Curtis Nelson. A massive praise and a massive well done to Curtis Nelson for getting it back. Obviously, you will remember that he was involved in the team that went out to Austria, but unfortunately suffered a setback, which, I'm not being funny, the fact that he was even in Austria was a massive step forward, and I'm absolutely buzzing to have Curtis Nelson back around the group. I do still think he will probably be moved on, whether it be in January or the summer, but it's massively important to have him back in and around it. Now, obviously, we've mentioned Owen Beck. As you will all know, he has returned to Liverpool. Surgery, I believe surgery will have happened by now, and we won't see him again at Derby County. Now, in terms of David Ozo, I think we're now in the region of 2 to 3 weeks before he's back, so we could see him this side of Christmas, but we will sort of wait and see sort of how it goes. We need to make sure he's back on the grass before we sort of go in that direction. Now, obviously, it's massively important that this wasn't as bad as it was anticipated to be. Like, I'm not being funny, if it was a tear or something major, he would have been out for 3 to 4 months, and it would have been a similar situation with Owen Beck, where we have to then go into the market and replace them. Now, I think it's absolutely massive that we get David Ozo back as quickly as possible, but I also think it's important to note that we have been brilliant with and without Ozo. Obviously, Ibu Adams has stepped in and done his job very well. Ultimately, not the same sort of technical side of things, but he's done very well in the most part. Obviously, we've got Lewis Travis. It was reported about a week ago that he was going for another scan because he was improving, but not improving as well as they expected. He's had that scan, is still recovering well, and he will be back within the group. I think it was around 3 weeks, about a week ago. But with that second scan, I'm not sure if the timescale has changed, and we didn't get any proper confirmation in regards to that from John Eustace during the press conference yesterday on the 27th, which is the time I'm recording this, but you'll be seeing it on the 28th. In terms of both Lewis Travis and David Ozo, they don't just waltz back into the team, which I think should be expected with the way that we've been performing. But I think when you look at sort of those midfield options and everything that we're dealing with in there, I think we need more. And obviously Liam Thompson's back fit. He was on the bench. Obviously Owen Eames has been involved in the last couple of games, maybe, or maybe just on Tuesday, which is obviously massive for Owen Eames, a proper player who I hope does get an opportunity over the course of the next few weeks before we see the return of the likes of Ozo and Travis, because once they're back, he'll be pushed back down to the 21s, the B team, and we won't particularly see him. But the fact that he's getting himself onto the bench proves that it's showing something to John Eustace, and I hope that with the return of Ozo and Travis, I hope that we can start to sort of discuss that situation about how this midfield balance works, because it's working really well at the moment with Bobby Clark in the middle, and I think Derby County really needs to take a look at making that deal permanent. Now, in terms of Max Johnston, as it was mentioned last week, he is back on the grass, which is obviously a positive for Derby County, and there is a possibility that Derby County could see him this side of Christmas, although it was anticipated he would be out until the start of January. So he's definitely recovering well, and we've got to be very careful that we don't sort of rush him back in for me, because the worst thing that you could do for me is put Max Johnston in a position where he's sort of rushing to sort of get himself back within the group and things like that, because you don't necessarily want to have that sort of force in front of him. Do you know what I mean? And I love Max Johnston, but when you look at the way that Joe Ward has been playing, I don't think that we can. I don't think we can complain too much about the team and the setup that we've seen so far over the course of the last few weeks. Now, obviously, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. Well, let's look at the team then, which we could expect to see on Saturday. Now, obviously, it's going to be Zetterstrom in goal, Clark and Langas as two of the centre-backs. The midfield four won't change, and the front three probably won't change either. There's a big discussion around, does Dion Sanderson get straight back in for Danny Bart? And I think it is a big conversation, but I don't think there's much thought that needs to go into it. For me, we know that Danny Bart isn't going to play week in, week out. We know he's going to put those performances in to go and secure games and things like that. And hopefully that's something which we'll see over the course of the next few weeks as we sort of head into that sort of Christmas period. We might get another suspension to Matt Clark or to Sondre Langas or something like that. And that puts us in a position where we have to have that conversation about Danny Bart stepping in again. But I think we've got plenty of quality within that back line. For me, I do think Sanderson will step straight back in, though. I can't see much conversation around that. Now, I know a lot of people have been discussing Ben Brereton Diaz over the course of the last few months. And don't get me wrong, I don't think he's had the greatest start to life at Derby County, but obviously he picked up a really nice goal up against Wrexham, and he's certainly coming into his own. I think, obviously on Tuesday he played on the left instead of on the right, and I think that's probably the best performance we've seen from Diaz. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure sort of how I feel about this situation with Diaz, because obviously it is very much a hit and miss conversation. Now, if we do look at Tuesday, I think on occasion we was playing like a 4-4-2, which then rotated into a 3-4-3 as the game went on, just sort of in a like defensive standpoint, because Ajimang being on the right didn't really make much sense to me, if I'm completely honest. I don't really think it worked, if I'm honest. But obviously we've got the best performance out of Diaz in playing in that left position, so I imagine it'll probably stay the same. Now, obviously, you can let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments. Is there any other changes that you'd want to make to this team? Because for me, 6 wins in 7, the only loss came as a result of not only a disappointing collapse, but also some poor refereeing decisions. But we're heading in the right direction for me, and hopefully we'll see that progress over the course of the next few months. Now, obviously, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. This has been the Derby Digest, and we've looked into everything about Derby County's injury list and what we could see on Saturday afternoon. It's going to be a massive game at the Riverside. We're going to be live for it from 2:30, where we're going to discuss Derby County versus Middlesbrough. We're going all the way through for a live watch along. So obviously, if you are interested in that, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye, guys.